Hello, good evening, and welcome to Fact Sheet. If it is not the fact, we will not discuss it. My name is Ifa Dankwa. Tonight, we are talking about Ghana's educational system. Within the past 2-3 weeks, there have been a lot of issues that the educational system in this country is dealing with. About a week ago, about four teacher unions, sent a word out to government that they are embarking on a strike action for government's failure to pay them cost of living allowance. They say they had written letters upon letters to the Education Ministry for an action to be taken on the request of the payment of cost of living allowance. They gave government an ultimatum of June ending. Unfortunately, government was unable to meet their demands, and therefore they embarked on a strike action. Just today, the government called them, the striking teacher unions, for a meeting. The latest that we are picking up is that the meeting ended abruptly. Some of the teacher unions left the negotiation. They were saying that government's stance as they saw it then smacks of mistrust, and that the strike action continues unabated. We've had conversations with some of our reporters across the country, and they tell us that when they go to schools, most of the schools that they have visited today have been closed down. That's irrespective of a directive by the Ghana Education Service that headmasters should keep the schools open. Apart from that, the issue of shortage of food in senior high schools is also becoming a matter of concern. Somewhere in February, the issue popped up. Unfortunately, it died an unnatural death. In May, it came back again, and it was estimated that government owed suppliers some 500 million Ghana cedis. Just about a week ago, we had Chas of the Upper West region saying that if government does nothing to alleviate the plight of students, they may not be able to continue catering for them throughout this week. There has been a release by government indicating that it is going to take the necessary steps, that's by the close of today, to ensure that schools do have food. But many do believe that the action that will be taken by government will be unsustainable, given that as we speak, that's according to the Africa Education Watch, government owes suppliers to a tune of about 320 million Ghana cedis. These are the issues that we're going to talk about tonight on Fact Sheet, and we're looking at its impact and implications on Ghana's educational system in the country. It has generated a lot of conversation. Many are saying that it is about time, particularly with food shortage in some senior high schools in the country, it's about time that government reviews the feeding aspect of the free SHS policy. Many believe that it is becoming a burden on government to feed students who are in second cycle institutions. Wards and parents do not know what to do as we speak. Some are contemplating of going to their respective schools to pick up their wards. What would that mean for students who are preparing to go and write their BECE as well as the West African Certificate Examination, the WASE, in about a month or two? These matters will be our focus for tonight on Fact Sheet. When I return, I shall introduce to you my guests who are going to help us deal with this matter. Do stay with us. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying on with us. This is Fact Sheet live on ETV Ghana. It's also live on all of our social media platforms. Also live on Nisim in Tamale, Nisim in Bolgatanga. You can go and click on the share button on Facebook, and let's have this conversation. Within the next 40 or 45 minutes, we will try as much as possible to get to the root cause of the shortage of food in our schools, and also try to understand the position of some of the striking teacher unions. And I read to you This came in not too long ago. We understand that representatives of the Ghana National Association of Teachers, NAT, and the National Graduate Teachers Association, NAGRAT, walked out of a meeting that was called by government today. Let's start the conversation. My guests are Dr. Daniel Osabute, who is a lecturer at the Accra Technical University. He's joined us in the studio. And also via Zoom is Mr. Peter Anti, who is the Executive Director of the Institute for Education Studies. Gentlemen, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us this evening on Fact Sheet.
Good evening.
Let me start with you, Dr. Osabute. Are you surprised of the action taken by some of these teacher unions walking out of the negotiation that was called by government today?
Yeah, good evening, Sefa, and let me say good evening to all viewers of ETV. I wasn't surprised because anytime you are going into any form of negotiation, you don't go with an entrenched position. You don't take an entrenched position. Okay. At least I expect that each party to the negotiation would have taken some kind of they should have relaxed their position a bit. But if you listen to the reps from the teacher unions, they were like government was forcing them to call off the strike before they enter into any negotiation with them. And in negotiations, we don't do that. Okay, so I wasn't surprised because if they had succumbed to that particular pressure, I'm sure members wouldn't have forgiven them because members were not expecting that leaders would go into negotiation and then just agree that we are going to call off the strike when the substantive issue has not been tabled. So I wasn't surprised at all. And you see, Sefa, one thing about negotiation is that you are going with a reason. The reason should be very tenable. Okay, you should be able to convince the other party why you deserve that 20%. And I think that the teachers deserve the 20%. Why am I saying that? Look at cost of living, very high. Petroleum products increasing every day. Our city is depreciating. If you look at the minimum wage, that is about $1.65 or so. Okay, so what do you expect teachers to do out of this meager salary? Definitely they will come for negotiation so that the suffering will be alleviated a bit. So if you go in and it's like, if you don't call the strike or you don't call off the strike, they are not ready to negotiate with you. I think that was too harsh on the part of
too harsh on the part of government to have said that. And you say that the teacher unions are justified to demand for the cost of living allowance. But there is another school of thought, Doc. They are saying that government have shown goodwill because when teachers went to the negotiation table, or TUC went and were requesting for salary increase, they had 4%, 11%, that's 4% last year, 7% this year. There's something that shows that government indeed, if anything at all, cares about teachers in this country. Should that not be enough evidence that indeed calling off the strike and sitting down with government, they'll be able to reach an amicable end?
You are talking about 4% and 7%. Looking at the cost of living then, as against what we have today. I mean, I don't think teachers deserve the 4% and then the 7%. They deserve more than that. You understand? But they understood the position of government and then they just accepted it the way it is. So today, if we are being faced with the same economic hardship and your own people are asking for cost of living allowance, I'm sure government should have been come out earlier than the teachers pushing for it.
Government should have been preemptive, coming out to say that, okay, I'm increasing, or I'm giving you cost of living allowance 20%.
As we speak, depreciation is over 27%, 27.6%. Okay, it means that standard of living is falling if you are not going to increase the salaries. Okay, if you want to consume the same number of items that you used to consume with the same amount, you are going to get something less. So what are you going to do to at least pushing the people? So they're going to ask for 20%. I don't think they are demanding too much. I don't think so. It is within the remit of, they managing it.
Okay. I'll come back to you, Doc. Let me go to Zoom and ask Mr. Peter Anti. 20% cost of living allowance is led to a strike action. As we speak now, the 4 teacher unions say that the strike continues unabated. Were you surprised of the outcome of the negotiations today? Mr. Anti, if you can unmute yourself for me, because
Oh yeah,
it
sure,
looks as if
sure,
you've
sure,
muted yourself.
sure.
Um,
Yeah.
if you
Is it
if
okay?
okay, sure, I can hear you now. I'm asking whether
Yeah.
you are surprised of the outcome of the negotiations today.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't surprised. If you have followed how some of these things always occur, you would note that there was a strategy to force the teachers to call off the strike, and the only way they could have done that was to try to say that there was some sort of negotiations going. And you know, technically or legally, if you are on the negotiating table, you are not allowed to go on strike. So let's bring in other labor unions, and then let's say that we are starting a negotiation with them, and then that will force the teachers to call off the strike, and then we will start a negotiation, and we don't know when it's going to end, and that is how it's going to be. So for me, that is how I saw it, and I knew that the very moment that they table that thing on the table, the teachers will walk out. Why am I saying this? The issue of the strike, the teachers notified the authorities in May. And that is the reason why sometimes I really don't understand our authority, I mean, the leaders. You see, a group of people have told you that if you don't negotiate with us, if you don't pay us this amount, on the first week of July, we will go on a strike, or we will undertake a strike action. And that was in May. You sit down, May ends, June ends, and truly, when we entered July, they stay true to their words. Then you start calling them for a meeting. Who does that? Who does that? So for me, I think that we leadership have not shown any serious commitment towards the plight of the ordinary teacher, and by extension to the Ghanaian worker. And some of these things would continue to happen, and we shouldn't be surprised.
To you, government was not proactive enough.
No, that's how it's always been. Labor unions would throw in their intention to embark on an industrial action. Authorities would not mind them. I think they feel that they cannot do it. Then the labor unions embark on the industrial action, and then they call them for a meeting, and then they tell them that we are starting a negotiation, call off the strike, and that is it. That is the strategy. I don't know why they do that. Maybe one day I would understand. But for me, if you are in a leadership position and you are given an advance notice of such an action, even if you don't have the ability to pay, engage them, talk to them, explain things to them. I know that the leadership of these unions are very reasonable people. They would understand you. When the pressure comes from their people, they'll be able to absorb the pressure and then explain things to them. You don't keep quiet and wait for them to call the strike, and then you try to start some sort of negotiation which will force them to call off the strike, and then that negotiation will never happen, and the members will come back and say that their leaders have gone for something, and that is why they no. I don't think it's right, and I think that what the teacher union, I mean the leaders of the teacher unions are doing is right. They should continue to push for what their members deserve.
There is a school of thought that the teachers are coming from a very rigid position or an entrenched position that if government fails to do nothing about this, they are unwilling to yield to whatever the call may be from government. What do you make of such an argument?
I don't think so. I think that when they issued the warning in May, you realize that the press releases were done by the various regional leadership. So I think Central Region did, Ashanti Region did, I think one of the regions in the Northern sector also did. So it was a strategic something that they planned to do. So right from that point, the leadership of the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations should have
pick these signals and then find ways and means to engage them, even if it is informally. And I think that is how we deal with, that kind of relationship between the employer and then the employee. You don't sit down and assume that whatever the employee will do, you don't care. At the end of the day, you can go to court and compel them to go and work. Remember, these are teachers, and if you force them to go to the classroom, they can go and sit in the classroom without doing anything. So that kind of engagement should be there. That kind of talk should be there. I know that if you are able to convince them more, of course, we all know the times that we are in. So nobody would be so much rigid about the 20% COLA. And this is not the first time we are paying COLA. We've paid COLA to employees before. So maybe they can settle for 15, they can settle for 10, they can settle for 5%. Just engage them and be truthful and frank with them. This is how we deal with these kind of situations. But our leaders feel that they are authority and they can do whatever they want. Labor union leaders would also continue to embark on strike actions and walk out of meetings.
And this is what Nagrat and Nat are saying, that the posturing of government smacks of mistrust. Do you sense the same thing?
That's the same thing that happened with the UTAG strike. That's the same thing that happened with the UTAG strike. Remember, Senior Staff Association of Ghana also went on strike. It's always that kind of mistrust between the employer and an employee. Why should it be so? And it's because over the years, government, leadership, the employer, have acted in a way that seems not to take into cognizance the plight of the employee. And anytime the employee comes out to talk about the challenges that they are going through, the employer does not show any kind of care or concern. So that kind of trust is not there. The words of our leaders do not carry weight as they are supposed to. Technically, if you are going on a strike and the Minister of Employment and Labor Relations calls you for a meeting, you know that the next thing is something concrete is going to happen. But over the years, you've seen that even to the extent of even the vice president and sometimes even the president, they give their words and I don't know, nothing happens. So there's this kind of mistrust will continue to be there till we get leaders who are true to their words and their words carry weight. We will not, leaders of labor unions will never trust the words of the employer.
This question goes to you and Dr. Osabute, but I want you to answer that question first. You have been interacting with teachers across the country. Let's have a feel of how their living conditions are like.
Yes, there's not a single day that passes without me having messages or having a chat on our official Facebook page or on official WhatsApp platforms with teachers and then on Telegram. And some of them who are friends, we used to talk and we continue to engage and talk about a variety of issues that concerns the sector. So I know I wouldn't even say teachers. Everybody in the country is going through this hot season. Okay, so the teachers are no exception. Just that with them, it's been something that's been with them for a long period of time, and we know right from so many years back, people take the teaching profession as a stepping stone. Of course, our president is on record to have stated that if you want to be a millionaire, you can't go into the classroom. So that kind of perception about the teaching profession is there. And we've not done a lot to change that perception. And because of that, we are feeding into always trying to impoverish teachers. There are a lot of teachers who have taught for years, and there's nothing for them to show for the kind of work that they have done in terms of material wealth. In terms of social capital, yes, because they've taught students, a lot of people, sometimes they get this kind of social capital. But in terms of material wealth, most of the teachers are living hand to mouth. And in these times of distress, it's even very, very, very difficult for them.
Let me come to the studio. Doc, you are a lecturer, and I suppose that you have other colleagues who might be at the second cycle institutions or even basic institutions. You have conversations with them. What did they tell you?
So far, we are in the same economy. They are going through the same economic hardship. it's not been very easy for them, especially those at the basic level. Okay, you visit teachers in the villages and you look at their deprivation. It is not something to really look at. It's not too good. Teachers are really suffering. Now, in this country, we always say that to go into the teaching profession is a sacrificial job.
Yes. And that your
But at
blessings
least
are in
teachers also deserve some blessings on earth, so that when they go to heaven, they can also get the top up. But I mean, so far you go to villages and for a teacher to even own a bicycle or motor, basic school teacher, it's difficult. You go to the market, the same market we all buy from. So I don't think that we should look at them as people who don't deserve what they are calling for or asking for, because we all agree that we are going through economic crisis and it's affecting them as well. Okay, so the living condition is just going down every day, and teachers are no exception.
Let me come back to you, Peter. How justified is the demand for 20% cost of living allowance by the teachers?
Yeah, hello. Yeah,
Yes.
well, I think my friend in the studio mentioned the percentage that was given to the student to the teachers, and that's 7%. At that time, inflation was around 15-16%. Now inflation is 27.6 at the last time I checked. So if you are paying 20% COLA, it means that you are just covering the cost of inflation. That's all. So for me, I even think that if we were doing well, we should be paying the COLA around 25 to 30%, so that it will cover it will be normally, you see, some of these things are economic and technical. Increase in the pay of employees should always be more than the rate of inflation. The least should be at the level of inflation. But we were in COVID, so I think they settled for the 4% and then later the 7%. So now that we are having 27.6% inflation level, I think it's in order that the COLA is pegged at 20%. Yeah, I think it's in order. If the government can afford, it can increase it to even 30% for the teachers, and I think they will be very happy.
And you mentioned that there was a conditionality over there. If the government can afford, from where you stand and from our allocation to educational sector in this country, do you believe, they have the belief that government has that fiscal space to afford paying 20% cost of living allowance to teachers? We might also recall that not just teachers, but other public sector workers unions are also joining the fray. We have the Ghana Medical Association, we have the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association also joining the fray. Do you feel, where you stand, and from your analysis, that government has that space to meet the demands of teachers and other public sector workers?
Yeah, I know that's going to be difficult, and that is why you need leadership to be a little bit sublime, be sober, and then engage the labor union leaders in a way that will make them also go and convince their workers. We all know the times that we are in. We are inviting IMF to come and help us with some of the challenges that we are going through. There's no fiscal space. The country's finances is in disarray. So it's going to be difficult for the government to pay 20%. It's going to be very difficult. And if government is able to pay, it means that it's going to borrow to come and then pay. You borrow and pay the teachers and the other labor unions that will come on board. So you need people who are a little bit sober, who appreciate the challenges that the people are going through, and who can talk the leadership through the process and let them understand that this is what we wish for you, but we cannot pay because of this and this. But be assured that as soon as things are fixed, we'll be able to do this and this. That kind of commitment should be there. And as I'm saying, the words of our leaders do not carry weight nowadays. They say A and they do B. So it's going to be difficult for them to even convince the leadership to really appreciate the challenges that the government is going through.
Initially, there was a directive by the Ghana Education Service that headmasters of these schools should go back to the classroom, should go back to their schools let the schools be open, let children come in and be around. But from the information that we're picking on the ground, most of these schools we've been to, the Oti region, Volta region, Upper East, Upper West, Northeast, Savannah, Northern region. We've been to the Bono and Ahafo regions. We've been to the Eastern region. The data that we're picking from the ground is that most of the schools that our reporters went to have been closed down. Now we understand that the teacher unions are unwilling to back off from their strike action. What is the likely implication on educational system? Let Doc answer that question in studio.
Okay.
Then I come to you, Peter. What are the likely implications of this particular action taken by the striking teacher unions on our educational system? Remember, we at a point in time during COVID, we wasted about a whole academic year in the house doing nothing because of the COVID-19. Will this once again set us back?
Sefa, definitely. I mean, when you have the academic calendar already in place, nobody envisaged that teachers will be embarking on such a strike action. So definitely it's going to affect the academic calendar. I'm sure that is why Ghana Education Service asked the head teachers not to close down the schools, but to keep the students there. But even that, there is a problem because just this evening, I read that Charles is putting pressure on the non-teachers to also work. Those who are cooking for them and all that.
Those who are providing essential services to the students in some of these schools.
They should be in the schools.
Yes.
And if the unions should put pressure that, look, you have to join us because you cannot be there whilst we are on strike, then it means automatically we have to close down the schools. And once the schools are closed down, it means that those who are preparing for the WASI and the BEC are definitely going to be affected. So this strike action is something that if it is not solved now, will have very negative repercussions on our students, especially those who are preparing for their examination.
Peter, what do you see the implications are if the strike continues for this week? And this week, I mean, by the close of this week, will be 2-3 days away from today, if teachers do not go back to the classrooms.
One, I think that the call to the head teachers to still keep the schools opened, for me, at the primary and junior high school level was not sustainable because there was no way that they were going to have control over the number of students that are coming to the school without the teachers. The implications are enormous. You know, we already have a very distorted academic calendar, as my colleague in the studio said. So if you are keeping students in the house after this long distortion in the academic calendar because of COVID, it means there's a bigger challenge. Again, recently, UNESCO released a report, and in Africa, our part of the world, in fact, in Ghana, we have recorded almost 60% learning loss due to the COVID outbreak, and that means that we needed space to catch up. So you have 60% learning loss. It means that your students have lost a lot of things that they needed to have studied. Then you have strike also looking at you in the face. So I think it's going to have a tremendous impact on our academic life for the students, and it's something that we should not downplay it. BEC is just at the corner. WASI starts, I think, almost 3 weeks. WASI they will begin WASI. So you can see that it's going to be difficult for the students, and we need to find a lasting solution to this.
How feasible is it finding a lasting solution to the current impasse between government and the 4 striking unions?
Yeah, so the answer lies with how government decides to engage the union leaders. I think that the talk that if you don't call off the strike, we don't engage you, although legal, sometimes you need to bend the rules to be able to achieve a certain end. And I think that this is one of the situations whereby you need to do that. They tried to do that to UTAG. At the end of the day, it was difficult. The universities were almost closed down. And that's the same posture that the government is taking. It's not helping because at the end of the day, you have students that are going to be be disadvantaged because of the mode of negotiation that or the style that you are trying to adopt. So the leadership, I mean, the authority should find ways and means to engage the teachers. And I personally feel that the teachers should also look at the final years. So for me, I think that the human side of the teachers should come to play. Especially in the senior high schools, where teachers have been with these students for almost 3 years and they are about to write their exams. I think that they should find ways and means to engage them whilst they prepare for their final exams. And that is a humanitarian call that some of us would want to make to the teachers.
Doc, do you see the strike action of, by these 4 teacher unions ending anytime soon? What will it take for the strike action to end?
I'm sure this strike action will end if government willingly, invite the teachers. They discuss the issue. Even if the man is not there, just promise them that, things are difficult. We share in your plight. But then currently we don't have what it takes in meeting your demand. Give us a month or 2. It is just about talking. It is just about convincing the people that you share in their plight, but you don't have the money. And you see, more so, Sefa, we find ourselves in a very difficult situation because we are now negotiating with the IMF. We want to send a program to the IMF. And we know some of the conditionalities with IMF bailout.
Yes.
Definitely they will tell you if you are asking for balance of payment support, then you should find a way of cutting down on the expenditure. So teachers are also afraid that if you don't put in the demand now for the COLA, and then they settle on this IMF program, they are going to be disadvantaged. That is why we have lots of unions coming up with the same demand. And just 19th, I'm told that public service workers union,
yes.
65 institutions
Yes.
are also threatening to go on strike. And this thing is
on an indefinite strike.
Indefinite strike. So it tells you clearly that people are so agitated because they don't know the future in terms of the IMF bailout. So if there is any demand, let's put it across now. So I think that we can end this impasse if government shows that a willingness to let the people know
how do you want government to show that willingness, given the fact that it is evidentially clear the government in the interim, in the short term, will find it difficult meeting some of these demands?
It will be difficult to meet
and it's also clear to some of these unions that are demanding that government pays them the cost of living allowance.
Yes, it will be very difficult, but they are also Ghanaians. They understand the situation. Okay, so even if you cannot meet the total demand of 20%, at least you should be able to negotiate and meet them halfway. But you don't take entrenched position in negotiation. I told you from the beginning. So they are human beings. They will understand the situation. You see, I remember 2015. I was a union leader, and then we had a similar problem. And then Labour Minister told us that, my brothers, what you are telling us is true. You deserve this money, but the honest truth is that there is no money. So we are ready to pay, but give us time. That statement alone, calmness. So it is how they talk to these union leaders, and then they'll be able to communicate to their members. Because as my brother was saying, we have final year students, okay, they'll be writing their WASI within 3 weeks or so.
Yes.
So I'm sure we have teachers who also have wards, okay? Not that teachers don't have children. We have teachers who have wards who will be writing WASI and BCE.
Yes.
So once you talk to them and they understand the situation, I am sure they will also soften their stand.
This is Fact Sheet live on ETV Ghana, live on Nisim in Tamale, Nisim in Bolgatanga, also live on all of our social media platforms, particularly Facebook. You can go to Facebook and click on the share button. If you are a teacher, I would want to understand how your living conditions are as compared to perhaps about a year ago. Let's have a perspective and enjoy the conversation. Let's go for a break. When we return, we shift our attention to another issue of grim consequence if nothing is done as soon as possible. Shortage of food in some senior high schools in the country. Some have attributed this to government's indebtedness to a tune of about 320 million Ghana cedis to food suppliers. Government says that it is taking the necessary steps to deal with the situation. How sustainable will this move be? Let's go for a break. When we return, we'll focus on that. Many thanks for staying on with us. This is Fact Sheet. If it is not the fact, we will not discuss it. Just recently, about a week ago, the Upper West Regional Chapter of the Conference of Heads of Assisted Secondary School came out with a press statement indicating that schools within the region were suffering as a result of shortage in some of the schools. And they said that if nothing was done as of then, they will not be able to continue catering for the students in respective schools within the region. We've visited some other regions and we've had confirmations just this afternoon. And we spoke to the headmaster of St. Peter's Senior High School in Nkwetia in the eastern region, who confirmed that yes, they may have some of the supplies, but most of them they do not have. And the supplies that they have, as we spoke to him as of that time, could only last for about 4 or 3 days. If nothing is done up until then, they may be compelled to let students get out of campus. How did we get here? That's the first question that I'll throw to Mr. Peter Anti. Peter, if you're there, how did we get here?
Yeah, thank you very much. We used to have a model of food distribution that was decentralized. So those times that the schools were being run not on free senior high school level, the school authorities had the mandate to purchase food items for the schools, and that was basically done by the headmaster, the beza, and then the matron. So that is the model that we used to have prior to the introduction of the free SHS. Now, when we introduced the free SHS, we moved to a centralized system where the buffer stock was in charge of distribution, and then we had certain distribution agents that interplay with the distribution process. So basically, that is what we have been experimenting for the past 6 years. Now, the issue is that we have been doing this for 6 years and we have not had any comprehensive analysis of whether this thing is really working or not. Now, anytime some of these, the issue of food shortages come up, you hear authorities flatly denying that there are food shortages, and those who bring these issues up are either tagged as anti-government or anti-free SHS, or we just want to publish negative news in the system. To the extent that even when Charles came out to initially talk about their inability to reopen schools because of the same challenge of food shortages, we were told that, oh, it's something that have been addressed, food is on its way to the schools, and that this is just going to be something that would pass away. Now, what we are picking from the system is that most of these people that are supposed to be the distribution agents are being owed by the government. And this evening, the PRO for the Ministry of Education indicated that the shortage is simply because of delayed in disbursement of funds to the agents. So that is why we are where we are. There's no money to pay them, and when you are owing somebody and you're not paid, you cannot ask a person to still supply you with the food. Where we know that
can we say
inflation is on a high.
Just a quick one. I want to come to the studio. Can we then say that we did not thoroughly think through the implementation of the free SHS, particularly the part of feeding, Doc?
Yeah, Safa, looking at a system that has run for many, many years using the decentralization when it comes to food staff for the schools, and then you introduce the centralization because it is now free, definitely you are bound to have some challenges. And what did they even put in place to ensure that? Because we've been hearing almost every time that these schools have run out of food, another school running out of food, and we have government coming out to deny and all that. But at the end of the day, we find it staring at us in the face. And here we are, the same problem. So you ask yourself, does it mean that government is not aware that when the suppliers supply the food, they will need money to replenish the stock? It is automatic, okay? Because that is the capital that they are using.
Yes.
So if I supply and then they are not paying, where will I get the capital to replenish your stock? Okay, and more so, you look at the cost of living. You look at the cost of food items now, very expensive. So whoever is supplying will need more money to supply the same quantity. Yet the first supply has not been paid. So where will the person get money to keep on supplying? So definitely, because there is no money, we find ourselves in this difficult situation. So I think that, Safa, what I'll say is that, you see, this free SHS policy, I've been saying it is a very good policy, but the implementation was not done very well. The reason is simple. You see, you can't tell me that parents who can afford to feed their wards when they are home, when they go to school, they cannot feed them. Where it has gotten to, this free SHS policy must be reviewed. Let us have free across board. All these students should enjoy the free education. But if you choose to send your ward to the boarding house, be prepared to feed that ward. And this burden will be off the shoulders of government. Because I believe if parents are paying for the feeding of their wards, we will not be having these challenges. Because it's very expensive to feed children in the schools. And government, you don't have it. So why wouldn't you rather relax the policy so you allow parents to come in to also contribute? Yes, we know it is a political promise that the government made, but what we've gotten to, let people know that you have done what you can, where parents should also come in to assist. And I believe parents will be more than willing to assist when it comes to providing food for their children. Because, you know, food is so important for the development of the brain. We have children in the school saying if they are not being fed well, do you think they will be able to develop their brains to also grasp whatever is being taught? That's the situation.
That's the situation. That's according to Dr. Daniel Osabote. A quick one, Peter, before we wrap up. Africa Education Watch is saying that government owes suppliers to a tune of 320 million Ghana cedis. Government just today issued a statement indicating that it is going to take necessary steps to rectify the situation. Do you feel government will be able to have that huge amount of money to pay to suppliers so that suppliers can go back and supply food to these schools?
I think that we are going to have a temporary solution to this shortage that we are talking about. I'm told that some of the food items have been sent to some of the schools. I don't know how long that will last, but before the year ends, we will come back to this discussion again. And it's simply because we are not looking for a permanent solution to the problem. We are trying to just solve it as and when it comes up. So yes, there's a government. They can find ways and means to get some of the food items to the schools. It's unfortunate that we have to get to this point, and it's because people have decided that they would not listen to anything that is said about a policy when it is not in line with what they are thinking. And I don't, as an academic, I don't think that is how things work in any policy space. Definitely, you would have to get people to critique a policy for you, to give you alternative ways of implementing the policy. And when you have done this for a number of years and you are not getting the needed results, you need to subject the policy to critical review.
Do you support the call that the policy be reviewed and the feeding aspect, those who are willing or those who are capable of catering for the awards at the schools should pay for the feeding.
I have authored a paper, and not even once. I have authored about 3 different papers on free SHS, and it's all about how we can review this. And in one of the papers, I have elaborated how we can do this. When people talk about there's no data, there's all those excuses that people give. I've given ways and means that we can do this to satisfy all classes of people in our society. So, for example, as Doc is saying in the studio, you can say, fine, those day students you don't pay. Those going into boarding house, you have to pay. But some of them who go to the boarding house are also from a very disadvantaged family. So you always also have to think about them. And there's a model that you can apply to do all these things. I think that our people are just not ready to listen to, because it's a political policy. And,
all right.
And that is what it will continue to be till we I don't know.
Thank you. On that, I don't know note. Thank you very much, Mr. Peter Ante, who is the Executive Director of the Institute for Education Studies, IFS, and also Dr. Daniel Sabuto, who is a lecturer at the Accra Technical University. And I end with this question as to whether, if you're a parent, if the free SHS is reviewed and you're being told to pay for your ward, if he or she is going to a boarding school, whether you will pay for it or not. We will interrogate this matter further on the morning show tomorrow between the hours of 5 and 9 a.m. My name is Ifa Dango. Many thanks for joining us. The show will be repeated tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you very much.